this. All right. All right. Anyways, I'm gonna edit it, so it's fine.
Yeah.
All right. So today we have a special guest. His name is Jonathan Malm. He's an entrepreneur and writer, and the author of Creative for More. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for joining us. Can you tell us who you are, what you do, and what do you do for a living?
Yeah, I run a few websites to help churches with their creativity. One is called churchstagedesignIdeas.com. It's just about kind of decorating, designing, creating a kind of an environment on your stage. Another one is sundaymagazine.tv, which is an online free magazine that's all about the creative process of making church happen. And a few others here and there, but that's kind of the main thing that I do. That actually supports me along with some of the books that I've written. You mentioned Created for More, the devotional, and then Unwelcome, which is kind of 50 things that churches do to scare away first-time guests. So just recently came out with that one, and continuing to write some more about kind of the creative process and kind of making guests feel welcome.
Right. You have another book, right? It's something about church series.
Yeah, so there's a few ebooks too. Developing a Series is one ebook that just kind of talks about how to package and create sermon series that are more compelling.
Right.
I think it's pretty natural for pastors or maybe even the creative team to know kind of what to do. This is my content, but then how do I package it and arrange it in such a way that really gets people excited about it? And then another ebook that just came out called Set the Stage, which is all about stage design, really more about the philosophy behind it. I think there are a few things that churches who do it right get right, and churches maybe who don't quite do as well can kind of learn from.
Okay.
And then also an ebook called Rethinking Your Church Website Strategy, or Your Church Web Strategy, which is just all about the website and making that basically visitor friendly.
Great. That's awesome. Actually, just read the one for Unwelcome Church.
Mm-hmm.
I just read some chapters, and I think it's a great book and a great resources, basically for church today.
Thank you.
And well, we have a website that is helping the Hispanic community through this environment, which is creativity, right? And there are two cultures, because for Hispanic, this is kind of new for some churches, and there's many people that start doing stage design in their churches, and but how are you dealing with pastors or with churches when someone came? I mean, if I'm a creative person and I'm trying to do, I know how to do stage design or a graphic series, but the church doesn't take it very well. How do you deal with those things?
Yeah, there's a few different kind of things to note. The first one is a lot of times we approach it wrong when we're talking to a pastor. We might say, a lot of the pastors think, oh, we're just trying to do this to look like a rock show, or to try to be like, culture, which, culture is kind of toxic. So that's a legitimate reason not to do it. Our goal in church is not to try to be like the world. So that's kind of the starting point where a lot of churches and a lot of pastors start, and where a lot of people get hung up. But I think, my parents were missionaries in Guatemala. We're Texan, so we speak English. But in order to be effective in Guatemala, we had to learn to speak the language of Guatemala, which is Spanish. I wish I spoke it better than I do now, but while we were there, we did pretty well. And it's the same thing. Our culture, our generation has a language, and that language is visual. We watch TV, we watch YouTube videos. Everything is visually stimulating. So in order to reach effectively our generation, we have to learn to speak their culture. Part of that might be stage design. It's not necessary. Not every church needs to do stage design, but that's one tool to reach the generation. It might be graphic design. It might be, all these things. Really, our culture is one of creativity. I mean, we invest so many millions of dollars in advertisements and TV programs and books and music, and all of this stuff we make excellent because it really reaches a deep part of us. So in order to reach that deep part of people that we're trying to reach, we have to learn to speak that language. And all of these kind of creative elements are that language. So when we can incorporate them into the church, again, the purpose is not to be like the world, but it's to communicate to the world who speaks that language. So that's really kind of something that I think anyone who wants to incorporate this in needs to kind of approach it from that angle. Another thing is, man, there's a way to get to people's heart. Have you noticed how, I can talk and it sounds good, it sounds compelling, but if there's music behind me, like if you watch a good movie, that speech that the guy is saying before the army attacks the other army, that music that starts rallying you, gets you excited, that gets deeper than just the head, it gets to the heart. So creativity is a way to kind of get that message from the head. Instead of just the head, it gets to the heart, which is our goal in church. We're not just trying to reach the head, we're trying to reach people's hearts. So creativity is one way to do that.
And you talk about, you talk about something that created environment in the church that takes graphics, takes music, takes the worship. Tell us more about that environment that the church needs to get the hearts, actually, what you're saying, the hearts who they don't know who are in the church, but people who don't know Jesus, actually.
Yeah, a lot of that goes, it's important to realize who you're trying to reach. So a church in Miami, Florida, which is, the young, really creative, crazy generation, they would probably approach things differently than a rural church in Mexico. The people in Miami are used to flashy, crazy, intense visuals, the most cutting edge music, even probably some dance music involved in the worship. So there are some churches in Miami who do that. That's how they approach their creativity because that's who they're trying to reach. Whereas there are other churches that are rural that use different types of music and maybe a little bit more subdued and not as intense and not as flashy. So it's really important to understand who you're trying to reach. And really, you can probably notice that based on the type of people in your congregation. If you have a lot of young people, there's a good chance that's the type of people you reach. So, man, target your creativity, your environment toward those people. A lot of churches will see, some mega church in the U.S. or somewhere else and say, oh, that's what we need to do because they're reaching so many people. But if that's not who God has called your church to reach, you probably shouldn't try that. You should really be true to the identity that God has given to your church. And each church has its own unique identity. God didn't create one type of church to reach everyone. He created many different types because there are different people. We're all different people. We all kind of need different things. We need to hear different things from God. So why wouldn't he create different churches that speak in different languages to different people?
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, actually, our show is basic to it's creative minds, and we have to bring those ideas, And one of many questions that I have from our team and from other churches that I also heard, it's how a creative person manage their time. You wrote books, you do, you have your own blog, you do this, you do a lot of things. How a creative person manage their time?
That's a great question. And I think there are so many different ways that people manage their time. I have one friend who has, there's a special type of die. It's a dice, it's used for gambling, but or for games. He has one that's specifically for time management. And what he does, he's a graphic designer. His name's Joe Cavazos. He lives pretty close to, he lives in Mission, Texas, which is right across the border. But yeah, so what he does is he actually, when it's time to create a graphic piece, he rolls that die, and whatever number comes up on it, and it might be 10, 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, that's how long he focuses on a project. He shuts down Facebook, he puts his phone on Do Not Disturb. He just shuts down all external distractions, and he focuses 100% on that project. I think that's one really cool way to do it. One of the things that I do that I love is I create to-do lists, and I only put on my to-do list what I need to do that day. I use a program, it's free, called Wunderlist, Wunder list. And it allows me to schedule everything. So if I get an email, as soon as I get that email, I will put something on my to-do list, either to answer it immediately, either I'll answer it immediately, or I'll say, hey, why don't I respond to this email in 3 days? Or why don't I respond to it in 5 days? Or, do whatever it's telling me to do. And then I just clear that email out. So everything I need to do is in this list. The thing that I love about that is I can quickly kind of, I can reward myself by getting through all of the things I need to get done. And as soon as I get done with that, I get to play. I get to watch TV or read a book, any of that stuff. So, I mean, even spending time with God, I have that on my list. Every single thing I do. And it just helps me a lot to know exactly what I need to do for the day. And it gives me a reward for finishing early. And I don't do other stuff. I mean, once that's done, if I'm really motivated, I'll try something different. But I don't. I try to get it done immediately, and then I watch TV and do my relaxation time. I think so many times we know when our deadline is. So like, I have this project due in 2 weeks. And so we'll kind of like play with it and I'll try some of it today. I don't like that. I'll try it tomorrow. But I just say, hey, I'm going to do it this day, regardless of the deadline. I'm going to do it today and be done with it. Or if it's a book, I separate my book into different chapters. Hey, I'm going to write this chapter today. I'm going to edit this chapter today, write this chapter today. So those long things, you can start kind of dabbling in it and, kind of messing around. When it's something that requires a little bit of creative thought, like writing an article or writing a book, I'll put it, 2 weeks out, and maybe I'll just put on my to-do list, hey, just think about this topic today. And I just think about it for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. I don't do anything on it, but it just starts getting my head thinking about ideas. Then when I'm ready to sit down, I've already kind of processed some stuff. Maybe I'll write some notes and I just kind of am ready to go for it. So that's kind of, I hope that helps a little bit. Each person does different stuff, but that's what works best for me.
Yeah, I hear the problem with graphic design. They request, at the church, we need to do, a bulletin, right? And so it needs to be this information every week. And sometimes as graphic designers, we get plain in our thoughts, like where I get my resources. Because I spend many times sometimes looking for resources, what I'm going to put on the, you got the information for the church, the events, times and everything, but sometimes you need to add something because you see the bulletin and say, you know what, something's missing. And you spend time looking for resources and probably pictures, right? Or everything. And I see this problem is so common on some graphic designers that are starting on this because someone who's already have the resources, their website where they're gonna take out the pictures. It's another story, but I see this quite kind of I couldn't say this. It's something that always they dealing with it. Where gonna find my resources? And I found taking the I forgot the website. That one have stage design.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, we made a stage design in our church, and we found. We got some ideas from your website,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that website is a great resource for the churches because sometimes we go to a conference and we see this mega platform and with a lot of lights and this and that, and we thought, how can I do that, right? But you got this website. It's can you tell us about that website?
Yeah, it's just churchstagedesignIdeas.com. And that's really what it is there are churches around the world who have figured out how to take these huge productions and to make them inexpensive. You'll find some of the coolest things you can do on your stage are possible with $50 or $100, or some churches spend a little bit more money, but you can do some pretty cool things. And I think that's kind of an important point you talked about. is finding those resources. Where do you find those resources? And one of the things that I think great creative people do is they're constantly looking. They're just constantly aware. Even so, before I even have a project due, I kind of already know what's out there. And I've already kind of cataloged it either in my head or in a notebook or on Evernote. So whenever I see something, I see a really cool idea, I immediately think, okay, how could I do this if I wanted to? I'm probably not going to, but how could I make this happen? And I start kind of breaking down the idea just in my head. So when it comes time to, hey, we need a stage design, I can say, I was kind of looking at that stage over there and I was kind of thinking how I could recreate it, maybe do something a little different. So I kind of call that, preloading. Whenever you go to a website, if you've already been there, the images are already loaded, so it doesn't take time to come up. So that's kind of what I'm doing, is I'm kind of getting those images ready in my head. So when it comes time to, I have a bulletin design. I kind of know where there's something already available, or I know where I can get great fonts, or where I can get a great idea, or I've seen this somewhere. So that's what a lot of my sites are about. churchstagedesignIdeas.com is one of them. Seriesideas.com is another. I just recommend subscribing to that site and looking at what other churches are doing. The goal is not to copy, but the goal is to see, oh yeah, I've seen how some church approached that. We could maybe approach it that same way. And then also worshipsetideas.com, which is just, again, for worship. They put together a song list and you can kind of see what other churches are doing. I remember as a worship leader, I would hear a song and say, I would love to do that song at my church, but I just can't see it, I don't know how that would work. But then I would see another church performing that song and I got it. Like, that actually works great. So then that kind of encouraged me to do that. It's the same thing for, anything you're doing. Whenever you see someone else do it, you kind of get encouraged. We can make that happen.
Right. That's great. That's awesome, man. There's another question. I think it's very important because I used to work in California, right? And here work by 7 years, approximately, something like that. And you see these churches where I always have graphics. They do video announcement, pretty cool. All the visual is tight, But back to the thing, what say in the Hispanic community, there's many churches that they don't have the mindset that when the visuals get the hearts or get the people's attention. You work on, through all these years, have you been working through visuals, through all the creative things, and why? If you gotta say something to the church who hasn't this mindset yet, what do you should say to the church? Why is art important to the church? I think it's something important that we have to do in our church because we can. A lot of years. I remember when the worship team, they have a pandering and they have flags and all the stuff. Probably, a few years ago on the American church, but there's still churches that they are doing that. And kind of like if I'm new in Christ and I came to that church, it's kind of freaky out because probably new for me, right? But new for it's something new for someone who has many times the church. They're gonna say, this already out. But for those churches, right? These things from our video announcement and all the stuff are new. What do you say to those churches? To pastors or leaders. So probably there's a leader who they have those ideas, right? But the pastor say, you know what? That's not for us. Probably for, like you say, for our churches. What do you say to those?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is you can't force your pastor to, embrace visuals or embrace art. That's something they need to get the vision for because frankly, they're the leader of the church. They're who God put in authority. And if you're always trying to, rescue them or teach them, that puts you in a dangerous place because you're trying to put yourself as an authority over them, which that's dangerous. That's not good. I found one of the best ways to introduce new ideas to a resistant pastor is to embrace their ideas. It's about humility. You know, whenever I'm able to say, oh, I love that idea, let's go with it. When I'm able to fully support their vision, it's amazing how they see, okay, this young person's not just trying to teach me, they actually are supporting me. Pastors start listening. As you respect them, they start respecting you. It's kind of a sowing and reaping type thing. So that's kind of the first thing to say. Second thing is, I would just say, you know, start with one thing. Start with one important thing. A lot of times I think we want to introduce visuals because we get bored with church. Like, oh, this will make it fun or this will make it exciting. And that's not the purpose for it. The purpose for it is to help us communicate better what we're trying to communicate. So look for one thing. So maybe that might be, you know, an illustration. Maybe for your pastor, you want to help him drive a point home. So look for one illustration you can really make amazing, that will really impact people, and focus your time there, because that is, you know, you can see churches that do video announcements, they do bulletins, they do series graphics, they do, you know, all these countless things. And there's no way you could approach that if you're just starting. Right. But you can approach one thing well, maybe a video announcement. Maybe you can devote your time to doing that. I find the less you do, the more, basically the better you can do something. You know, the less, you know, individual things you can do, the better you can make one individual thing, make it really impacting. And that's what I would encourage them. You know, I think probably in Mexico, you guys feel like maybe like American churches have an advantage, tend to have more money maybe, or tend to have more. And, you know, frankly, that's the attitude in every church I've ever been in, even in the US. Every church is under budgeted. They're understaffed. Nobody has all the resources they want. Even the large churches that everyone looks at and thinks are incredible, they don't feel like they have enough. That's always the case. But true creativity is learning how to be creative within those constraints. Right. Even when there isn't enough, it's learning how to be creative within that environment.
Awesome, man. And are you working on something? Like you say, they're working in a new book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us an advance?
Yeah, I'm kind of, right now I'm working with, he's the guest services director at North Point Ministries, you know, Andy Stanley's church. And we're writing a book together that's basically about how to make guest services phenomenal. So I just was in Atlanta last week. We were kind of rewriting some stuff and getting it ready to start showing some publishers and see if we can make it happen. So we'll see.
Sounds good. Are you, I mean, I know there have been talked with people who don't speak English, right? I don't speak English very well, but I've tried my best. But I mean, I read you a chapter that I get free for Creative for More. I think it's a cool book, man. It's really awesome for creative people, because sometimes, as you say, sometimes we work for God, but sometimes we are, you know, it's separated from Him because I'm working at the church. We are doing this and that, and I think that it's a great resource for us, you know. And but you think probably your book will publish on Spanish, because they are great.
Yeah, that's up to the publisher. I would love it if they did, but I'm guessing probably not, because, you know, for them it's tough because they have to, you know, make a certain amount of money to make it worth publishing it, and, you know, they have to translate it, spend the money to translate it. It just, so my guess is probably no. I would love it if that happened, though. It's kind of out of my hands now, though.
That's awesome, man. Well, it's a pleasure that you join us today. It's really an honor to have you here, and thanks for your time, and you're awesome, man. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed talking.
Thank you, bro. So I hope you have you next time with another topic. This time it's just people to know you more, who you are, what you do, and you know, people on the Hispanic community get to know you. So I think it's a good starting, and I hope you see you soon in the show.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you, bro. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.